Hello, this is Theodore, Operator Prime, Mindtree Exponential. Today on the podcast, creativity. Creation is the gravitational force within human beings that causes cosmic clouds of infinite possibilities to swirl, then coalesce, and finally, after epochs of heat and pain, to take shape into something meaningful and beautiful. Thomas H. Cannon.
Cut twice, measure once, wing it. It's just cardboard.
King Kiara. An environment that assesses human learning with standardized tests assumes that learning is finite. For example, a student can get a perfect score on the SAT. Such an environment rewards conformity, deference to authority, and blind obedience. Since the rewards for these behaviors are not worth the sacrifice of one's soul, for many rambunctious students, such an environment generates a great deal of anarchy, disdain for authority, and rebellion. While this latter is ironically a very enriched means of learning what it means to be an American, it's not exactly the most productive way to build human capital in the 21st century. An environment that assesses human learning based on the expression of creativity assumes that learning is infinite. For example, a work of creativity can never be perfect. Only ever a better union of strengths and weaknesses in the use of one's skill set. Such an environment rewards exploration, risk-taking, and vision. The rewards are regenerative and self-sustaining and produce intrinsic motivation, grit, and a drive toward mastery. Such behaviors are functional outside of the artificially controlled environment of a school. They are the source of power, organizing inclusive systems, and the engine driving creative destruction which pulls us all out of the mud into modernity. Previously, we have discussed how reading is a small subskill within the grander human ability of literacy. And this overly confined definition of learning manifests once again in the emphasis of standardized curriculum attempting to contain the much grander human ability of creativity. Instead of telling a student what they will learn, the creative learning environment starts with a simple question. What do you want to create? Student X thinks about it for 2 milliseconds and responds, "A mighty castle." "Go for it," the teacher replies. Well, I don't know what that means," the student admits. "Then we should start with some ice cream." Student doesn't know what this teacher means, but replies quickly, "I'll take sherbet." Humor is pure creativity. Using the ice cream cone of learning to coach creativity. By reviewing the ice cream cone of learning infographic, which is a model of enrichment, you can see that all SAT knowledge is contained by the cone, while the act of creation includes all the levels of Edgar Dale's cone of experience and extends beyond into the unknown. Star Trek wouldn't have been nearly as interesting if they were in an amazing spaceship studying for the SAT. When confronted with a blank slate, the creator becomes aware of their lack of knowledge, and this moment of self-awareness places them in a uniquely advantageous state where they are willing to be guided by a coach through the levels of the ice cream cone of learning. Thus, I suggested student X begin at the beginning of the ice cream cone of learning model with a book. Student X decides that the best place to get a book is the library. Upon arriving, the student leads the way, only she doesn't know where to look, so she is required, by her lack of ability, to ask for help of a librarian, who happily shows the student how to find a book. Student learns how to navigate the library and is amazed to find many books on many subjects, and returns home with a pile of material which she dives into. So that she can take note of what she likes, the coach provides her with a pad of sticky notes, and then, most importantly, the coach heads back to the sideline and allows the student the freedom to play the game. After hours of reviewing books, placing way too many sticky notes on pages of importance, student says to the teacher, "Did you know?" A student-led discussion ensues in which the student tells the teacher all about castles. From time to time, the coach will ask a few key questions, which encourage further discussion and greater cognition. The preparations for creation continue up the ice cream cone of learning. The student watches videos on castles, which expands into an investigation and teacher-led discussion into the history of the feudal system, and an interest in Charlemagne, and then to visiting the annual Renaissance Festival for the on-location demonstration of jousting, and more. By this process, without ever encountering an artificially created curriculum, through her own self-directed exploration and initiative, with the support of a good coach, she has laid the foundation upon which she will build her castle. She enters the world of creation, and construction of a box art castle begins. Seven.
Cut twice, measure once, wing it. It's just cardboard.
King Kiara. Transcendentalism was founded as a protest against many of the imposed and ill-fitting behaviors of 19th century society. Specifically on the subject of education, the Transcendentalists spoke up for the amazing inherent wisdom in children, and suggested that education was not one of stuffing information in, rather it was a matter of drawing out. An acorn has all the inherent wisdom needed to grow into a giant fruit-bearing oak tree. The old system of standardization wants to stuff knowledge into students' heads, while the 19th century transcendentalist goal and the 21st century homeschool goal wants to grow awareness and expand understanding. In the old system, the student follows the directions of a teacher. In the new system, the student leads with their interests and inclinations. In the old system, there was one right way, one right answer. In the new system, there are as many correct ways as there are students to make a way. With the knowledge that there is more than one right answer in the world, the student finds motivation to explore and risk being wrong in the quest to find a new right. The best part is that many young students have amazingly creative ideas simply because they have not yet been bashed into shape too completely by the forces of conformity. They are not blinded by the systemic and cultural paradigms that attempt to tell them what is right. 6. As the castle building progresses and the end of construction comes within view, something interesting happens. Student says to teacher, "You know what?" "What?" "What I really need to do is create an entire kingdom. because a castle is really the pinnacle atop a vast and powerful kingdom. Thus, upon completion of the box art castle, the student is ready, able, and motivated to expand the creation to more appropriately fit her expanded understanding of the subject. And before long, as construction on a box art kingdom takes shape, she understands that the expansion will have to go into different dimensions and is easily coached in any of a number of possible directions. The journey cycles around, and student X begins with books, and this process eventually leads the young king to decide to turn a box art kingdom into a real small business, or, as she sees it, a 21st century fiefdom which she can rule. The wise old coach, however, knows this marks her entrance into the gauntlet of ever greater challenges required of building in the friction of the real world. However, these challenges, unlike those of standardized tests, have more than a single correct answer, and this increases her motivation to participate, because if she is wrong, it won't be because the teacher or a test said so, and if she is right, it will be because she generated the answer herself, and creation in this way becomes its own motivation. By this process of first envisioning a castle and seeing through to the creation of a kingdom, she has made herself a king. An emphasis on creation allows more freedom in action, and this encourages a student to participate. Creating a creative environment leverages a student's inclinations and interests, further encouraging participation. Creative activities allow the student to use what skills they have, and the practice improves those skills, building on strengths, providing confidence, which can later be redirected toward improving weaknesses. Self-confident students are also very willing to invite a coach's support when they eventually run into self-imposed limits on their existing skills. Running into these walls generates an intrinsic motivation to learn more than they currently do, to become capable of more than they currently are, to push beyond the boundaries that currently contain them. Creativity thus becomes a form of self-sustaining growth, similar to that of a tree, which requires gentle support early on, but eventually grows on its own and is strengthened by the friction of the high winds. To see the product of this creation strategy, please go to our show notes. There you can find links where King Kiara presents Kikamush Kingdom, the Box Art Kingdom, at the 2015 Maker Faire at Library 21C in Colorado Springs. To support this podcast and continue funding the creation of this content, please go to Audible and check out the audiobook, The Ice Cream Cone of Learning, The Brain, Enrichment, and the Power of Audiobooks. Update. Since this post was originally drafted, the kingdom has expanded to include a navy, preceded by a study of naval history, which expanded into her small business and manifested in the creation of an ebook on the historical development of military technology, and now an enriched podcast presentation.